He had all these corruption charges, and he was like desperate to make coalitions with whoever would make this coalition with him. The fact that like those parties grew in influence is also a byproduct of Likud governance for so long. And also, much like America, it's the fact that right-wing forces were able to dominate for so long. We are now going to move on to, yes, Amy Schumer, Israel's an apartheid state by GDF.
Imagine for a moment, if you will, the United States in the present day.
Criminally underrated channel,
Imagine for a
always.
Moment, if you will, the United States in the present day. Imagine a bill reaches the U.S. House of Representatives called America, the nation-state of white people. In its basic principles, it states, the right to exercise national self-determination in the United States is unique to white people. Further down, a clause for white settlement. The state views the development of white settlement as a national value and will act to encourage and promote its establishment. And
it's funny because I made this exact same argument earlier today before watching this video. Oh man, that would be so hard to imagine if someone were to make an argument like that. Oh, I'm sure this has nothing to do with Israel.
Outraged, a coalition led by the Congressional Black Caucus initiates a challenge to the bill and proposes a bill of their own, where it calls the United States a country for all its citizens. But the Speaker of the House unilaterally disqualifies the bill before it's allowed to even be debated. Why? The House General Counsel explains in a statement, the bill includes several articles that are meant to alter the character of the United States from the nation-state of white people to a state in which there is equal status from the point of view of nationality for whites and people of color. The bill is dead. America, the nation-state of white people, passes through both chambers of Congress unchallenged. It's then signed into law. U.S. President Joe Biden would invoke the law in a tweet a year later, saying, America is not a state of all its citizens. According to the nation-state law we passed, America is the nation-state of white people, and not anyone else. As one rights group put it, there is no democratic constitution in the world that designates the constitutional identity of the state on racial grounds, as serving one ethnic group. There is now. This disconcerting scenario is anything but. It's completely real, and happened just a few years ago to little coverage and little condemnation.
Man, that's crazy, dude. What? No. Guys, you don't understand. It's complicated. I got to keep repeating this point over and over again in an effort to make sure that I can appeal to my liberal sensibilities, to make sure that, like, people understand it's complicated. It's complicated that this is a real thing that happened in Israel, and also, you know, there's not really too much you can do about it. You shouldn't really think about it all that much because it's complicated. It's a complicated situation.
Nation. You've probably heard the phrase, Israel is an apartheid state. But what does that really mean? Apartheid is an Afrikaans word meaning apartness. It was the name of a policy of racial discrimination and separation in South Africa, which lasted from the late 1940s into the 1990s. South Africa's apartheid government was roundly condemned by the international community. And as a result, a long series of conventions and statutes led to its firm prohibition under international law. In fact, the UN General Assembly has condemned it as a crime against humanity since as far back as 1968. In 1973, the General Assembly adopted the International Convention on the Suppression and Punishment of the Crime of Apartheid. The high contracting parties to the Geneva Conventions designated apartheid a grave breach, a protocol which went into effect in 1979. And the Rome Statute, which created the International Criminal Court, outlawed it as well. Indeed, apartheid is an extraordinary crime, in the same category as slavery and genocide. In fact, the 1973 convention uses language straight from the Genocide Convention. The various conventions and statutes differ in their language, but the areas in which they overlap include the following. There exists an institutionalized...
Guys, I'm beginning to feel like this Israel country might be a little racist. I mean, excuse me for my bold language here, but I'm beginning to think like, I don't know, maybe not so good? I don't know.
Regime of systematic racial oppression and discrimination. The regime was established with the intent to maintain the domination of one racial group over another and the regime features inhumane and inhuman acts committed as an integral part of the regime. Virtue-signaling left-wing liberal rags like The Atlantic and the New York Times lecture us on racism in America, but when covering Israel, absolutely zero mention of not the plight of the Palestinians in the occupied territories, but within Israel proper. A common retort to the charge of apartheid in Israel is that 20% of Israel's population is Palestinian.
The worst lie is this. Israel...
That's the worst lie, bro. Actually. Yeah. I hate how bad that lie is. I'm always thinking about how that's the worst lie ever told.
is an apartheid state.
These are citizens of Israel who can vote in elections.
And even are represented in all branches of Israeli government.
Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, shit. Before I forget, also, that's like new and improved since 1967. Those guys lived under military mandate before 1967. Just want to point that out real quick, too, because it's like, whenever these motherfuckers are like, yeah, actually, have you considered that maybe Palestinian citizens of Israel exist? That's 23% of the population. Look at us. We're so good. We're so magnanimous. We let we let these fucking Muslims and Christians into the country even. And it's like, yeah, you did, because they didn't leave. And also, you know, they were literally not allowed to be represented in the same court system until 1967. And then also on top of that, still openly are disenfranchised legally in ways that if you put it into law in the United States of America, everyone would be like, what the fuck? This is the most insanely racist thing you've ever said. This is like, you know, Jim Crow laws amplified.
They can hold public office. They enjoy all the freedoms of their Jewish counterparts. Israel, therefore, is not an apartheid state. Setting aside what should be a glaring omission, that is the occupied Palestinian territories, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, millions of people that are suspiciously left out. I wonder why. No, for a moment, let's discuss these slightly less than 2 million Palestinian Arabs who live in Israel proper. Israel is unique in the world for its sophisticated information apparatus, and with its IDF...
People who are like, well, there's no racist words written in the law, wouldn't have a leg to stand up. Yes, exactly. That's why Israel's ethno-state is like unacceptable from even the most like, I don't want to fucking see the actual realities of the situation as liberals. Like, it's impossible. You know how Ben Shapiro says like, show me where it says in the law that it's like racist. Ben Shapiro would not be able to make that argument in Israel, okay? Which is why he rarely ever talks about it, because he doesn't want to talk about it, because, you know, there's no way to just be like, I'm a liberal and I think Israel is pog. You can't do that. It is straight up in the law.
Spokesperson's unit, Israel is able to write word for word much of the script that Western news outlets read from. It can be hard to know what is fact and what is fiction. By using Ground News, my go-to media tool, I can compare headlines and get additional context the mainstream media doesn't provide. This app and website combines thousands of sources from around the world and shows things like political bias, factuality, and source ownership. Of course, I've been following updates on Israel and Palestine, and this story piqued my attention. Israel's encirclement of Gaza City tightens as top U.S. diplomat arrives to push for humanitarian aid. On the website, we see that over 150 sources have covered it, and it's pretty evenly covered by the right and center. Looking closer, the Times of Israel, a left-leaning source based in Jerusalem, focuses on drones finding hostages held by Hamas. On the right, I even noticed articles from Russian state-owned media. I think what Ground News is doing is really important, and I encourage you to check it out. Go to ground.news/GDF. Subscribe through my link for as little as $1 a month, or 40% off unlimited access. And support my channel in the meantime. The story begins in 1948.
Times of Israel being left. I mean, technically, they're not as left as his Haaretz, but yeah, they are. Technically, Times of Israel is also like liberal-ish, I would say. Like they're definitely way more social liberal. Like Jerusalem Post, on the other hand, would be center-right. Haaretz is left. Like, it is the most left you're going to get in Israel, other than like 972, the magazine, right? Is it 972 plus 972, the Israeli magazine? Yeah, plus 972.
50,000 Arabs have vanished from what is now the State of Israel. Some say they were forced out. Some say they left on their own.
Yeah.
Many say it was a mixture of both. Maybe for argument's sake, I'll grant that every single Palestinian left on their own.
Roughly 90% of the population was expelled.
With all of these Palestinians now gone, the State of Israel begins a campaign of systematic destruction of Palestinian homes through demolition and forestation, the planting of trees in villages, making them uninhabitable. In 2019, Haaretz reported on the practice using declassified Israeli documents. Whether the Palestinians were forced out or left on their own, no matter, the destruction of homes ensured that they had...
Guys, you don't understand. This was like, this was, don't think about it too much. You know what I mean? You're over here acting like this is a big deal, but this is small bean Israel. They had to do it. Okay? They just had to literally, maliciously plant fucking trees that are not even that are not even organically there, to like Europeanize and completely eviscerate like invasive species that are not supposed to be there, to eviscerate the native trees, like the olive trees. Very weird.
Had no place to come back to, which under international law is still forced displacement. One example is representative of the broader
Yeah, they literally raise money for the trees to this day. They have birthright trip takers plant them, making people unknowingly complicit in this
trend. In 1948, the Israeli military ordered the northern village of Ikrit, with a population of 600, to leave temporarily.
This is a temporary measure.
They didn't actually cross the border, but relocated just several kilometers away. But they were never allowed to return. The residents sued for the right to return, and actually won. Israel's Supreme Court ruled in their favor. However, the Israeli Ministry of Defense refused to implement the decision, fearing it would create a precedent. In 1951, the Ministry of Defense...
Wait, what? Oh, that's weird. Why wouldn't they? I don't get it. Why would that be a problem? Why wouldn't that, Why would that be a dangerous precedent? By the way, both secular institutions, the IDF, also a secular institution, so is the Supreme Court.
Blew up all the remaining houses in the village. To this day, the Ikrit community numbers 1,500, who live just 20 kilometers away in Ramah. And to this day, they continue to fight for their right to return to their homes. In 1950, the State of Israel passed the Absentees Property Law, which the state used to claim all the land of all the Palestinians who had fled their homes as a result of the war, regardless of whether they fled to another country or were internally displaced. And to this day, they are still prohibited from accessing and using land and property that belonged to them or their families in 1948. From 1948 to 1966, the first 16 years of Israel's existence, Palestinians living in its borders were placed under military rule. The state used extraordinary emergency powers to confiscate property and close entire villages as military zones, confining Palestinians to dozens of enclaves. They were tried in military courts and required permits to leave their cordoned-off areas. They banned protests and political parties.
You know, like a similar thing to what you see in the West Bank today.
You know, like the West Bank today. According to Haaretz, Israel... Israel lifted its military rule over the state's Arab community in 1966, only after ascertaining that its members could not return to the villages they had fled or been expelled from. By the time military rule was lifted, Israel had completed its initiative of destroying Palestinian homes and making them uninhabitable. The damage was done. This bears similarities to the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which some Americans believe was the end of systemic racial discrimination in the United States.
At what point did we stop being racist? Was when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, or when?
Yeah, I would say after the Civil Rights Act.
So the day
that everyone was given. No, I mean systemically, yeah.
Although, of course, by the mid-1960s, following decades of discriminatory practices such as the Federal Housing Administration's whites-only requirement, the damage was already done. The United States was already largely segregated by neighborhoods of predominantly white single-family homes in suburbs and multifamily complexes in neighborhoods deliberately zoned by race. The same way that the segregation of American neighborhoods is visible to the present, the facts on the ground in Israel are quite a staggering dose of reality. Today, Arabs control just 3% of state land in Israel, despite making 20% of the population. The 90% of Palestinians who live in these areas.
Wait, so weird. How did that happen? I'm sure that if they had enough money, they could buy more land, right? Right? Certainly, since they have, so it's not an apartheid state, right? They could just simply buy more land. Certainly, there's no rules, literally to this day, that legally allow a Jewish enclave to forcibly expel Arabs from their communities if they would choose to do so, right?
Experience higher rates of poverty, lower levels of labor force participation, educational attainment, and health. 50% of the Arab population live below the poverty line. Further, only 2% of industrial zones in Israel, which generate a significant tax income, are located in these Palestinian areas. The 10% of remaining Palestinians live in so-called mixed cities, but even then, they are usually relegated to separate neighborhoods. But why don't they move? Unlike most industrialized countries, in Israel, the state controls 93% of the land, either directly or indirectly through quasi-national bodies such as the Jewish National Fund. In 2011, the Knesset passed the Communities Acceptance Law, which established admissions committees in Jewish communities to screen applicants based on their social suitability or their unsuitability to the community's social and cultural fabric.
Guys, remember, this is in Israel proper for the Palestinian citizens of Israel. No, they literally have this is in the fucking law, dog. It's in the law. Not for the West Bank. Those guys can't even go into Israel, obviously. Not for Gaza. Those guys can only go into Israel as long as they get like a fucking worker's permit or some shit. But specifically for the Palestinian citizens of Israel, they literally are not allowed to live in Jewish enclaves, as I said, unless they are chosen to, unless they are allowed, in which case, like, this law is specifically created so they can exclude Arabs from living in their own neighborhoods.
This vague wording enables discrimination, primarily against Arabs, but also against Mizrahi Jews, Ethiopian Israelis, or anyone whom residents of the privileged community fear will lower the value of their homes. The 2011 law stipulated that these admissions councils were limited to towns with 400 residents, though this rule was repeatedly broken. Regardless, in 2023, the law was expanded to towns with 1,000 residents. Today, admissions committees operate in 53 regional councils, which control 81% of state land in Israel. Arabs are, in practice, barred from leasing land in 80% of the land in the state of Israel. For more than 15 years, the residents of El Haran have been waging a legal...
Yikes. Seems kind of... Yikes. Seems kind of awkwardly racist, it seems. Like, remember when everyone was talking about the Palestinian citizens of Israel and how there's a guy in the Supreme Court who's Arab, right? There's military officials that are Arab, like in the IDF. Like, come on, how could you say it's an apartheid? This part doesn't seem too good, though, I think.
Battle to save their village, which is slated for demolition. In 2017, Israeli forces attempted to evacuate El Haran by force and began demolishing homes. Yaqub Abu al-Kiyan, a 47-year-old Arab-Israeli citizen, was shot and killed. The Israeli police allowed no medical assistance for 3 hours. Afterward, officers suppressed evidence of his innocence, and Benjamin Netanyahu accused him of being a terrorist, which he had to retract later on after a Shin Bet investigation cleared him of wrongdoing.
Oh, that's weird. Really odd. I'm confused because Israel never lies in the media, never follows along with whatever the fuck an Israeli official is saying. They famously don't ever do that. This is so uncharacteristic, and it's going against everything I've ever learned about Israel so far. Those woke guys in the Shin Bet again.
After the incident, the plan to remove the villagers was paused, but resumed in 2022. The new village being built, which will take its place, will simply be called Hiran. Hiran's cooperative association bylaws state an individual may be approved by the admissions if they meet the following qualifications: a Jewish Israeli citizen or permanent resident of Israel who observes the Torah and commandments according to Orthodox Jewish values. A similar fate doubtless awaits the thousands of homes which are demolished in the south of Israel every year. Home demolitions do not just occur on the West Bank, but in Israel proper as well. Attempts to challenge these discriminatory laws and uphold Palestinian rights are met with further difficulties. In Israel, political parties are illegal if they deny the existence of the State of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state, under the 1992 Law on Political Parties. Under the 1958 Knesset Basic Law, any political candidate can be disqualified for negation of the existence of the State of Israel as the state of the Jewish people, negation of the democratic character of the state, or incitement to racism. In Israel, BDS is out of the question. Though not a criminal offense to call for boycott, you are legally open to civil suit or sanctions under the 2011 boycott law. That same year, the Knesset approved Fundamentals of Finance Amendment Number 40, which has been called the Nakba Law. Under this law, the state can withhold funding for government institutions that commemorate the Nakba.
Wait, what? What? That's crazy. That's weird. Why would they do that? I don't understand.
Further limitations on free speech can be found in the Knesset's rules of...
By the way, this is literally fucking America on steroids. I hope you understand. Like, if you just let the psychopathic Republican Party and also the somewhat subtly less psychopathic, but still psychopathic Democratic Party unshackled, unburdened, okay? This is like, I mean, this is like, you know, making it criminal and impossible to say that, like, the founding fathers owned slaves or some shit, you know what I mean? Or like the indigenous genocide, Trail of Tears, like not even allowed to talk about it. Kind of like Florida, but nowhere near as bad. Israel is much worse, I mean, than Florida, obviously.
Of procedures, which state that the Presidium shall not approve a bill that in its opinion denies the existence of the State of Israel as the state of the Jewish people, or is racist in its essence. These provisions prevent Palestinian lawmakers from challenging laws that codify Jewish-Israeli domination over the Palestinian minority.
What is the difference between what is happening in Palestine and the Turkish invasion of Cyprus? Oh, Jesus Christ. Come on, dog. Come on. I know this is like your attempt at gotcha, but like, that's insane, bro. What the fuck? First of all, I don't even give a fuck. Like, yeah, give Cyprus to the Greeks. Okay, great. Like, I don't care. But do you think that like the Turkish occupied northern Cyprus region is literally fucking consistently bombing the southern Cyprus region full of Cypriots or some shit? Like, what do you think is going on in Cyprus? unironically, I have a Cypriot friend that says that. That's crazy. There's no way he like lives in Cyprus. He probably lives in America or some shit. Like, if you want to bait, you should have said Kurds instead. Because, like, I think the way that it works right now, the way that it works in Cyprus is like there's not full blown freedom of movement, but like the relation between southern Cyprus and northern Cyprus, occupied Turkish Cyprus, is literally not even comparable at all. Hey, I live in Cyprus. That's so fucking not true, lol. Yeah, you should have just said something along the lines of like Turks and with Kurds or something. But even then, most Kurds living in Turkey would openly state that at the top of the hour there's a 3-minute ad break. Okay, they're not going to see it, not because they're Kurdish, not because of anything like that, but just like we don't serve ads in Turkey, so they won't. On the other hand, will unless you subscribe for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account. I mean, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool that like people even learn about what Cyprus is. You know what I mean? Just to like try to fucking slam a dunk on me or some shit. So like I'm glad that people are learning more about the region at least. I lived in Cyprus and Cypriots can change side for sitting in a cafe, lol. The situation between northern occupied Cyprus and southern Cyprus is not like even remotely close to Palestine. Like it's not even remotely close. There's commerce in between. I mean, the entire world doesn't recognize it. There's like a UN border. People actually use it as an opportunity to be able to get into Europe. Right? I think. Isn't it considered technically European because it's Greek? So like it's been weirdly, I think it's been weirdly beneficial for everyone involved. There are a fuck ton of crypto scams ran out of there. Yeah, there's a lot of. Didn't you have a chatter in here comparing Quebec to Gaza? People will compare anything. Yeah. There's a lot of gambling that happens in Cyprus too. Cyprus is a law that states it doesn't count if you're entering through illegal ports. People get upset at you for saying that America sucks are the same people who think you have the same opinions as Erdogan because you're Turkish. It's so funny that there are people that stupid. Yeah. It's also weird because I just remember a Cypriot friend telling me it was Greece's fault for what happened with Turkey and Cyprus. I mean, the comparison between Cyprus and Palestine is ridiculous. Will not find a single person who is a Cypriot, I assume, that like lives in Cyprus that would make this comparison. It's also just not correct. Ridiculous. Like the idea that there's a consistent bombing campaign happening in like southern Cyprus that is not a part of the EU or anything, but instead like is completely controlled by Turkish occupied territory. Like I don't even know where to begin and where to end on this.
Let alone the suppression of free speech and expression. Further barriers for political representation have also been put into place. In 2014, the Knesset raised the electoral threshold, meaning the percentage of votes needed for parliamentary representation from 2% to 3.25%.
Oh, I forgot. I think they probably mean like northern Cyprus is like occupied territory, so that you think like Cypriots living in northern Turkish occupied Cyprus don't have freedom of movement in Turkey? They do. Like they are considered Turkish. There is no comparison here. Like, it would be like if it's an annexed territory or something. Like, anyway, I can't.
This spurred a condemnation from the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, saying the move would considerably weaken the right to political participation of non-Jewish minorities. Palestinians' right to political participation, according to Jerusalem-based human rights group B'Tselem, is under constant attack. In 2015, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sparked backlash for filming himself complaining about Arab voter turnout, saying that they were voting in droves. In a disturbing development, during the 2019 elections, Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party provided activists with some 1,200 cameras only in Arab communities. Jamel Baransi, deputy mayor of Reina, an Arab town in northern Israel, complained, "We noticed that each of these representatives had a camera on them, on their bodies, a move he believed was designed to intimidate voters." After the election, the PR firm behind the operation boasted on Facebook, "Thanks to the fact that our observers were placed in every Arab polling station, the percentage of voter turnout dropped to under 50%, the lowest."
Bro, it is so insanely racist. God damn Israel, man. Holy shit, they're so fucking racist. They're doing crazy. They're doing new tricks that are old tricks in a lot of ways. Like, this is fuck. No wonder the hogs love Israel, man. Even if it's not for like evangelical Christian shit, I feel like they look at it and they're like, hell yeah, brother. If they only knew. God, if the Republicans knew how fucking insanely racist the Israeli government is, oh my God, they would, the Republican approval rating for Israel would go nutty with it. It would get even higher. It's already at like 80%.
In recent years. The firm's head, Sagi Kaiser, had previously said, "Arabs are sitting alone in the polling station. We don't trust them. We let them vote in our country, even though it's our country. They should at least vote truthfully." Palestinian Israeli citizens' political history has also been fraught with political violence, especially during the Second Intifada. The violent crackdown by Israeli forces was not limited to the occupied territories. In fact, 13 Palestinians were killed in Israel proper and over 1,000 arrested. Disparities in justice also prevail, with Palestinians typically being placed in pretrial detention while Israeli Jews get bail. Desmond Tutu, the South African bishop, whose anti-apartheid activism earned him a Nobel Prize, would write in 2014, "I know firsthand that Israel has created an apartheid reality within its borders and through its occupation. The parallels to my own beloved South Africa are painfully stark indeed." In 2022, Michael Link, then Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in the Palestinian Territories, concluded in a report that Israel was practicing apartheid. In its list of inhuman and inhumane acts were the citizenship law, which restricts the ability of Palestinians from Israel to marry individuals from the West Bank or Gaza. This does not apply to Israeli Jews. It also lists torture. Methods of torture include sleep deprivation, beating and slapping, humiliation, unhygienic conditions, and extended shackling in contorted positions. Citing a report from the Public Committee Against Torture in Israel, who, in a 2022 report to the Office of the Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, listed several prisons inside Israel which practice.
Why do libs keep saying apartheid is just made up? Because they don't know. I mean, I will be fair. America is unfortunately broadly liberal. Most people are. Republican, Democratic Party, doesn't matter. They're all libs, okay? They're all libs of different varieties. Liberals everywhere. Most of them don't have any fucking clue that this is going on. If you were to actually explain, if you were to sit them down and make them watch this fucking video, some would probably go, "Oh my God, what the fuck is this? This is the most insanely racist thing I've ever heard in my entire life." Others would also have that opinion and then go, "It must be a lie. Who is this fucking guy? Everything I've heard is like very different than that." And then some of them would go, "Yeah, but that's necessary because honestly, like, these Arabs are scary and Israel has a right to defend itself." The problem is most people don't even get to that point to be like, "Oh my God, this is what's going on in Israel. What the fuck? I had no idea." For me, I don't know. I'm Turkish, so it's different. didn't exactly grow up being too fond of what had happened to the Palestinian population. But I guess for me, like, the comparison is learning about the Armenian genocide, right? Like, you don't learn about it at school. You learn that it's a lie. Like, that's how it's taught in school, in public education. You learn about how, like, it was a necessity. It had to happen during World War I because, like, the Armenians were collaborating with the Russians, and they were allowing like Turkish villagers to be fucking murdered and executed, giving away positions, actually murdering the Turkish women and children in these villages. And then that's the reason why they had to be forcibly immigrated. And then in that forcible immigration, some died. Oopsie. Like, that's basically the way that it is described. And I mean, obviously that's not the case, right? Like, it's not. So I don't know. I don't know how, like, you just kind of think about it a little bit, and then you realize, like, yeah, no, doesn't seem all right. That was my first question was that, basically, where I was like, this doesn't seem to be correct. Like, everything I've learned and everything I've known about how forcible displacement works, I have considered that to be a bad thing and not like a necessity. But ultimately, it's not even a thing. Like, it's not, you can't even discuss it. So if you live in Israel, you never even hear about this shit, obviously. I mean, as you don't even consider it.
Grueling torture. Amnesty International's report on apartheid in Israel had examined specifically the inhumane acts of forcible transfer, administrative detention and torture, unlawful killings and serious injuries, and the denial of basic freedoms committed against the Palestinian population in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories. Human Rights Watch's own report on Israeli apartheid stated, separately from the inhumane acts carried out in the occupied Palestinian territories, the Israeli government has carried out abuses against Palestinians within Israel, including refusing to allow Palestinians access to the land that was confiscated from them, and not permitting the more than 700,000 Palestinians who fled or were expelled in 1948 and their descendants to return to Israel. Indeed, not only can Palestinian refugees living in, say, Lebanon not move to Israel or Palestine, they're barred from entry. They can't even visit Israel, the West Bank, or Gaza. Human Rights Watch also includes in their list restricting legal residency in ways that block many Palestinian spouses and families from living together in Israel. Indeed, since 2002, Israel has prohibited Palestinians from the West Bank and Gaza from gaining residency in Israel through marriage. As a result of this policy, tens of thousands of families have been unable to live together. This is profoundly discriminatory. Ostensibly in place for security reasons, but when the law was enacted in 2003, then Interior Minister Avraham Poraz explained, a decision was reached at the time that for now, family unification would cease, as it was felt that it would be exploited to achieve a creeping right of return. That is, tens of thousands of Palestinian Arabs are coming into the state of Israel. B'Tselem, in its list of methods in which Israel advances Jewish supremacy, includes immigration, noting that while any Jew in the world and his or her children, grandchildren, and spouses are entitled to immigrate to Israel at any time and receive Israeli citizenship, Palestinians living in other countries cannot immigrate to the area between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River, even if they, their parents, or their grandparents were born and lived there. They also listed taking over land for Jews while crowding Palestinians in enclaves, saying Israel practices a policy of Judaizing the area, based on the mindset that land as a resource meant almost exclusively to benefit the Jewish public. Indeed, current Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich even used this term openly. Israel has used this land to build hundreds of communities for Jewish citizens, yet not a single one for Palestinian citizens, with the exception of the Bedouins in the south, who are having their current houses bulldozed to transfer them to new townships. B'Tselem concluded in their report on Israeli apartheid that Israel demographically engineers the space through laws and orders that allow any Jew in the world or...
I'm having a hard time following. What is the narrator quoting? I can literally tell from the font that he's using that this is B'Tselem. Like, this is probably a direct rip from the B'Tselem article about how Israel's an apartheid state.
For their relatives to obtain Israeli citizenship, but almost completely denies Palestinians this possibility. A regime that uses laws, practices...
Yep. There you go. Exactly. The Israeli Information Center for Human Rights in the Occupied Territories. How is B'Tselem allowed to function and report from within Israel? I've thought about this a lot. I think there is like a... I think it's got to be because it's like... I don't know if it's like the supremacist nature of it or something, or maybe it's like not considered like dangerous enough of a prospect. I don't know how to describe it. I feel like one, it's probably not really seen as like dangerous. Like the Communist Party operates in the US, they're powerless. Yeah. And two, I think it's like because like if you're a Palestinian citizen of Israel, you really can't say much. Like you'll get fucked. But if you're an Israeli, if you're Jewish in Israel, like you can kind of get away with a lot more activism. And I think that basically comes from like the idea that like Israel is supposed to be a democracy for Jews. So inside of that like liberal democratic structure, I think it's like it's still somewhat permissible as long as it doesn't like move in this direction of like defending move in this direction that they consider to be like completely dangerous. This way there is like, yeah, it helps maintain an image of free expression. Obviously, there is no such thing for the Palestinian citizens of Israel even, and certainly not for the Palestinians living in occupied territories. But it's basically allowed because I think it's not really. The fact is that Israel is pretty democratic. It's a very advanced social democracy. It's just racialized. Yeah, I mean, it's like a Strasserite dream. But also, even that's going away. Israel's not like a beautiful social democracy anymore either, because you can't do that. At the end of the day, no matter what happens, like the more you maintain. No, guys. I know what he's trying to say. He's trying to say Israel's like awesome and great and a democracy if you're Jewish, but even then, that's not the case because you can't really maintain an apartheid state while also trying to offer the amenities of a social democracy to your Jewish citizens only. Because guess what? The security concerns will inevitably take away more and more of your civil liberties, and the more you try to maintain like a coalition that can govern, the more right-wing they will become. Benjamin Netanyahu's like past multiple decades of governance has basically shown that. Like, we didn't arrive at Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir out of nowhere. That didn't happen overnight. That didn't happen for no particular reason by accident. It didn't even happen because it was Benjamin Netanyahu who was like so corrupt and wanted to fucking maintain his power in the way that, in my opinion, a lot of liberal Zionists try to explain it, to say, oh yeah, it's because he was going to go to jail. He had all these corruption charges and he was like desperate to make coalitions with whoever would make this coalition with him. The fact that like those parties grew in influence is also a byproduct of Likud governance for so long. And also, much like America, it's the fact that right-wing forces were able to dominate for so long. But now, when push comes to shove, you see the reality. Security concerns will always trump all. Security concerns will be put forward, or the demographic destiny of Israel will end up neutering the Supreme Court. Neutering the Supreme Court so that you can have more power at the tippy top. All at the behest of maintaining this apartheid regime. That's why we say fascism is a death cult, is a suicide cult. That's why we say fascism is inherently suicidal and will harm those in the in-group as well, because those in the in-groups will inevitably turn into those in the out-group. He could have chosen to create a coalition with Benny Gantz, who was a war criminal, and the libs would have been satisfied. He didn't, though, and the strong face of racism isn't comforting to Israeli libs. Miko Peled also had his take.
And organized violence to cement the supremacy of one group over another is an apartheid regime. Keep in mind, of course, the Palestinians who live have it best. The situation becomes worse in terms of quality of life and human rights in the following order: East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and without any doubt, Gaza. The very existence of these separate legal regimes is one of the main tools through which Israel fragments Palestinians and enforces its system of oppression and domination. As a 2017 UN report on Israeli apartheid described it, the different legal rights afforded to different sectors serve to enfeeble opposition to it and to veil its very existence, and lie at the heart of the apartheid regime. The same report refers to Palestinians in Israel as Domain 1, which serves to sustain the myth that one portion of the Palestinian population enjoy the full benefits of democracy.
Yep.
If the Palestinians who live in Israel themselves are relegated to second-class citizenship and abused and persecuted against, one can only imagine just how dire and desperate the situation is for all the other domains, the West Bank and Gaza. It may feel convenient to omit the occupied territories, or perhaps it's implied that they're not Israel's responsibility. Even though Israel's Supreme Court has itself ruled that the West Bank is indeed held by the State of Israel in belligerent occupation. The long arm of the state in the area is the military commander. It's more popular to say that Gaza is somehow free from Israeli control, even though it enforces what a UN report described as a medieval military blockade, controlling imports and exports, export taxes, the territorial waters and airspace, and has blocked the building of an airport and seaport. They control electricity lines, the underwater cable that phone calls are placed on, the network that provides internet, and the frequencies assigned to Palestinian cell phone companies. There's a reason Human Rights Watch, the International Committee of the Red Cross, the United Nations, and Israel's leading expert on international law, Professor Yoram Dinstein of Tel Aviv University, have all concluded that Gaza is occupied by Israel and is therefore responsible for its population. It has failed considerably at maintaining their well-being. Michael Link, Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in the Palestinian Territories, reported in 2022, Gaza had undergone a multi-decade process of de-development and de-industrialization, resulting in a 45% unemployment rate and 60% poverty rate, with
all at the behest of Israel's security concerns and primarily its demographic concerns. Evet, niye veriyorsun şu anda? Daha sonra verirsin. Önemli değil şu anda. Bilmiyorum baba. Dur ben yaparım sonra.
80% of the population dependent on some form of international assistance. As B'Tselem concludes, Israel has continued to control nearly every aspect of life in Gaza from outside. Despite this, outside of Israel's border, in all the land that Israel controls, not a single Palestinian can vote in Israeli elections. They have no political rights to speak of. In the West Bank, an Israeli Jew, or in fact a Jew from anywhere in the world, can live with full citizenship and benefits, while a Palestinian doesn't have citizenship. Israeli Jews go to civil court, while Palestinians go to military court, with an over 99% chance of being convicted. Hundreds are held without any charges at all, and can be held indefinitely without any trial whatsoever. Their political and legal rights differ by their race. It is overtly, indisputably, and unambiguously unequal. Palestinian political parties and demonstrations are illegal. Palestinians in the West Bank are governed by more than 1,800 military orders pertaining to taxation, transportation, land planning, and zoning.
By the way, that's one of the reasons why when Hamas says we want to do a prisoner swap, Israel is ready and able to give up like 11,000 prisoners, because many of them are not in prison or detained as a consequence. Why are people not this passionate about Ukraine versus Russia? Are you fucking on crack cocaine? Hello? Are you on crack cocaine? If people were as marginally interested in Palestinian emancipation as they were for Ukrainians, okay, we would have solved this conflict a long ass time ago. They would have probably fucking broken in to the Capitol building and probably like held politicians hostage until there was a munitions package immediately sent to Palestine. The fuck are you talking about? Bro, Zelensky went to the fucking Emmys, dog. What do you mean? What? What are you saying? What the fuck? Ukraine is a country, dude. What do you mean? Ukraine, as a nation, is a populous nation that is larger than Israel and all Palestinians. All Israelis and all of the Jews around the world, plus all of the Palestinians living in diaspora, living in permanent refugee status, could get together and have a singular fucking nation state, and it would not still be as large as Ukraine. Ukraine is a nation state on its own with 40 million motherfuckers living there. What the fuck? Like, if anything, many people at the time, myself included, said, why doesn't anybody have the same fucking smoke for Palestinians when people are talking about Ukraine? And then we found out that, like, nobody has that smoke for Palestinians at all. Every single liberal that was, like, fucking going Slava Ukraine literally is now, pretty much all of them, with the exception of, like, one or two communities, is straight up on the fucking fuck Palestine train. You had literally twice as many views during Ukraine too. Yeah, exactly. That's the other thing. Even on my end, like, there was like 50,000 people in here every day when Russia invaded Ukraine. Motherfuckers don't care about Palestine at all. Yeah, the same people who were going Slava Ukraine are now saying Slava Israel.
Natural resources, including water. Israel controls all the water going into the occupied territories. Here lies a level of profound cruelty which may be unique in the modern world. In Gaza, before October 7th, 97% of the water was already unfit for human consumption.
Find it funny that all the tankies that support Russia and Palestine while liberals support Ukraine and Israel? I don't think all tankies support Russia and Palestine. I think that there's a lot of people who do support Russia for sure, because they think Russia is a way to fight against like American hegemony. Okay, that's what they do. That's what people, I at least think I'm doing when I do not defend Russia at all. But like most people, like, I don't even know what we're talking about when we say tankies and shit. Lil Bro got nothing and tries to say Hasan
Have it
lost
best.
viewers. Lamau, this stream is dumb as fuck. You can stay with Palestine without standing with genocidal, terroristic Hamas. Lamau, this stream is dumb as fuck now. That's why you lost viewers. Yeah, I'm gonna keep it a $150 with you, brother. Okay, on your 11th sock account. I don't give a fuck. Okay, I do not give a fuck. I have never, ever in my entire life been like, oh, well, I should tailor my message and the things that I believe to triangulate to a larger audience. If that was my concern, I would be a liberal right now. Okay, are you fucking kidding me? I'd be giving you sexy ass, liberal ass takes, dumb bitch. So fuck out of here. It's my conviction and unflinching conviction that has caused a lot of rifts in my life that certainly has led to people leaving this community and then like going to other communities that fucking despise me because they just think that my positions are unmanageable. These positions are just, it's just goes against what they've learned their whole lives. Instead of re-examining their perspective, they look for a hug box that will give them exactly what they want to hear, which is basically, which is basically just like a rehashing of MSNBC, but with like edgy aesthetics and edgy takes. I think he lost viewers because Muslim-hating Zionists are dumb and calling us on a tanky and Hamas dumb fucking chatters. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I don't know if you've already seen this and given its length, you'd likely need to watch it another night, but I highly... Is this Creation and Catastrophe? Yes, it is a great documentary. Elent News, you are correct. I highly recommend everybody watch this documentary. It was very illuminating. I have watched this, yes. Yeah, if I was a fucking lib, I'd not only have more viewers, but I'd also get like way more mainstream recognition.
The equipment with which to treat their water was banned by the strict blockade of the Strip. Gaza was already suffering a water crisis. What was at the time lauded as an achievement for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the 1995 Oslo Agreement stipulated that 80% of water in the West Bank would be diverted for Israeli use, with only 20% for Palestinian use, despite the Israeli population numbering at over 100,000 and the Palestinian at well over 1 million. In a sickening provision, Oslo II provided Israelis with an unlimited water supply while restricting Palestinian supply to a predetermined amount. In reality, Palestinians extract less water than specified in the agreement. West Bank residents will attempt to supplement their water on their own, but military orders prevent them from building any new water installation without first obtaining a virtually impossible to obtain.
Yeah, they never give those fucking permits, dude. They literally purposely do not give permits.
Permit from the Israeli army. They are not allowed to drill wells, install pumps, or even deepen existing wells, and are denied access to the Jordan River and freshwater springs. Israel even controls the collection.
No, iyi ki sosyal demokratım demedin abi, sosyalizm dedin, tersini söylediğini biliyorum. Ama bence böyle daha iyi. Nope. I should have, that was my biggest mistake. My biggest mistake in my career was ever admitting that I'm socialist or a leftist at all. I should have just always said I was a social democrat and then advocated for the same exact positions that I advocate for. Because then people wouldn't be like, well, socialism is everything that I've heard about it and nothing that you're saying, even though you're better read on the matter than I am. Yeah. I think it would have made, I think I would have been able to make infinitely better propaganda. Infinitely better. People would still attack me, but I'd be like, I'm not a socialist. I don't know what you're talking about. I could just say that. Because, like, remember, absolutely zero people would be like, oh, he bought a house. Because I'd be like, yeah, whatever. I'm a capitalist. I love capitalism. But also at the same time, it seems like this is an untenable position. It seems like there's a lot of inherent contradictions in capitalism, and maybe we should do something about it. I don't know. Fuck are they going to say? House, ad breaks. Like 90% of the shit that people yell at me about is unironically like 90% of the shit that people yell at me is just like about what their fantasy is, about what it is that they consider what they think socialism is. You know what I mean? Yeah, people wouldn't get mad at like shirts or like fancy things that I purchase. Yes, we're going to watch Johnny Harris after
rainwater
this.
in most of the West Bank, and the Israeli army often destroys rainwater harvesting cisterns owned by Palestinian communities. Palestinians in the West Bank are also routinely murdered by soldiers and settlers with impunity. Palestinians further have been relegated to 165 islands, disconnected from one another through arbitrary roadblocks which restrict their freedom of movement. Palestinians aren't allowed to build homes.
If it's a contradiction, why hasn't capitalism failed then? First of all, hasn't failed. Excuse me. Hasn't failed. Look around. How many fucking times do you have to go through these boom bust cycles? How many times does it have to be like total incomplete and utter collapse for you to be like, maybe it's not working actually? Also, the other reason is because of the welfare state. That's it. Welfare state tries to desperately piece everything back together every single time capitalism inevitably fails. It fails all the time. How can you say capitalism hasn't failed when the shining beacon of prosperity, the best capitalism country on the fucking planet, can't even give its citizens health care, won't give its citizens health care? Of course, I think capitalism is the best. I'm a social democrat, and I love capitalism. I'm just saying that it's seemingly failing. As a social democrat capitalist, I think it's kind of failing. We need something different.
They require permits that are virtually impossible to obtain, so they can't.
Oh,
and when Palestinians do build them, Israeli forces bulldoze them. These realities compelled UN Special Rapporteur Michael Lake to imply that what's happening to the Palestinians doesn't only resemble the South African model, it's worse.
True.
This is apartheid. It does not have some of the same features as practiced in Southern Africa. In particular, much of what has been called petit apartheid is not present. On the other hand, there are pitiless features of the apartness rule by Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory that were not practiced in Southern Africa, such as segregated highways, high walls and extensive checkpoints, a barricaded population, missile strikes and tank shelling of a civilian population, and the abandonment of the Palestinian social welfare to the international community. With the eyes of the international community wide open, Israel has imposed upon Palestine an apartheid reality in a post-apartheid world. Every day a person is born in Gaza into an open-air prison, in the West Bank without civil rights, in Israel with an inferior status by law, and in neighboring countries effectively condemned to lifelong refugee status, like their parents and grandparents before them, solely because they are Palestinian and not Jewish. I need your help. This channel relies on donations and patrons. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider
subscribing. The reason loads of people don't agree with this shit is because of religion. Religion is the cause of all the problems in the world. I'm gonna die. Religion does not cause any of the fucking problems in the world. Religion is just used as the justification, okay? The rallying cry. A way to shield all of the wrongdoing by saying, oh, it's just God. I'm doing this for God. Fucking nuts. Israel is a pretty fucking secular society. Zionism was started by secular Jews.
And if you'd like to support my channel further, subscribe to my Patreon, where you'll have access to several exclusive videos unavailable on YouTube. You can also join my very active Discord server to view real-time news stories, videos, and updates on the channel.
Christian Zionists are super religious. Oh my God. Christian Zionism is not the reason why fucking there's unconditional support for Israel, okay? It's material interests. That's it. It's always, it will always be that. It will forever be that. Let's watch Johnny Harris.